Declaration of interests. And now we'll go to confirmation of the non-confidential minutes. Moved by Councillor Burdett, second by Councillor Wilson, and all in favour, matters arising, including the action sheet.
While it talks about some projects mainly stormwater and relates to something we discussed this morning, and it names a 300 to 400,000 that's been carried forward. There's actually the Douglas Street project, which is 964,000. That's also been carried forward. Isn't it?
Through the Chair, the Douglas Street carry forward we've moved the project into this financial year, but the budget remained back in the 17-18 financial year. We're paying for Douglas Street at the 18-19 financial year, so no money was moved from one year to the other, just the project was.
So can you explain for a layman then how it will be funded if no money's been carried forward, only the project?
So through the Chair, we've reprioritised the work program to make sure that we fit that one in first, and we've moved the other ones down the priority list.
So has that 964,000 in last year's money been used for something else?
The money wasn't carried forward, the money was left.
Spent in...
It wasn't spent by utilities, so we did have an underspend in some of the utilities area. We also had some overspends. They were reapportioned by the Assets and Infrastructure Committee at that same meeting that moved that 300 to 400,000 over.
Right, thank you.
Drawn from the Ruatoria Flood Protection Scheme. That's the dollars that are in place to protect Ruatoria we're talking about.
So under the long-term plan that's been approved, there's been removal. There was $10,000 per year as a separate line item for the Ruatoria Flood Protection Scheme. We've said that we can manage the work that's needed to be done on that scheme within the existing Land Rivers and Coastal budget rather than having a separate line item for that project.
Mm-hmm. Right. So these are basically, remember, these are just minutes.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Right, I'll just be moved and seconded as true and correct. So all in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Page 12, and we'll go to the school prioritisation program. Now, I know, having been to the public consultation process, through the public consultation process, this was quite a big issue with some of the rural schools that we went to. So the staff have gone away and attached some funding to it for the plan, and they've come up with a prioritisation list for us to approve. So would you like to explain it?
So through the Chair, just reintroduce Di Akarangi from Tairāwhiti Roads and Ben from GHD. So they have been pulling this report together. As a quick introduction, this is the report with the priorities for the schools. So the last committee meeting, you tasked us with coming back with how we would prioritise the schools based on the assessments that we've done to date. And we've put some rough order costs associated with those interventions along the column through there, so you can see what the cost would be. They're rough order costs, so they're what we think ballpark would cost. We'd have to do detailed design, of course, and actually look at what they are from there.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the writers for a really comprehensive report, but I am concerned about the quantum that we're talking about shifting per year from minor improvements. When I look at page 43, and it actually is a school, I don't need to name it, But one of the items on it, and if I look at what it says we'd spend 75,000, it talks about moving the generator onto the front lawn of the school grounds because it currently takes up 4 car parks. Well, frankly, I do not see that as a responsibility for the ratepayers of Gisborne District. If it's been necessary for a school to have a generator, then surely it's the responsibility of the Ministry of Education to make sure the generator is put in the right place. And that we shouldn't have to go, we should definitely be doing safety, and there's plenty of potential for that, and there's still quite a large spend on that particular school. So I would be really concerned if we thought we were going to fund moving a generator off some car parks. And I hope I can be assured that we're not going to do that.
With each of the schools, and sorry, through the chair, with each of the schools, the interventions, the costs we need to work through the schools around what it is and who is the appropriate person to pay for those things that need to happen. There are also discussions we'd need to hold with each of the schools around things like provisions of car parks. If we were going to do a car park on the school, we'd be looking for Ministry of Education to help with that, and or we'd be looking for how they were going to make it work within MOE, Board of Trustees. All arrangements would need to be worked through in detail with those schools. It's just flagging up that it's there, and if it was going to make an improvement, we'd have to work through with that school about how that was going to be funded.
But we've concluded, sorry, supplementary, we have included the cost of the removing of the generator in the summary page on page 14. And I just think it's really important that we do some of this work. But I also think it's really important that we remember that we have to have some level of fiscal responsibility, and that there is a responsibility on Ministry of Education and the government, a la the taxpayer, to fund some of these things. And we shouldn't just fall into the habit of thinking that we can do everything for everybody. And I feel really strongly about that. And I just am disappointed to see things that clearly are outside the brief of Council's road safety creeping into an analysis.
Yeah, just following on from that, maybe not to such a level. I looked at the recommendation and it's saying to agree to the prioritisation criteria and weighting, and to set a certain quantum per year to be spent. In terms of the details that are put into the report, we can pretty much just say they're preliminary, and what actually is to get rolled out yet still needs to be consulted with the schools. And because I've spoken to the school that my children go to, and the principal's not aware of the changes to the school that are in this report. So I'm just decided that I'll look at it as a preliminary, and it's not set in concrete, and it's something that will be agreed to with the schools. So while I share what you're saying, Councillor Seymour, I don't think anything in there is actually in concrete yet.
I'm sure you're right. I hope you're right. I am agreed.
Can I just make a comment? Like, I know one of the schools here that I was in a discussion with, and apparently at that point there was a sign somewhere else that they talked about moving to that school. It was redundant, and they could move it to the school, and I'm sure that all they wanted was a sign with writing on, and the price that looks like here looks like they're going to build a casino and put a sign up. You know, it just concerns me that, are we just talking about like just a plain signage, good plain signage? What sort of costs are we looking at? Right, some of this obviously is electronic, it has to be the price, but just to put a school sign, slow children, and big visible writing, what sort of cost in order, what sort of cost for that sort of signage?
I mean,
just to touch on that one, so that's Ngātapa School, and the signs that were going to get reinstated are probably redundant to the situation that we do need to provide there. So that's hence the increase in costs related to that school. So we're now talking that we want to reduce the speed there and have a different variable message set up at that school. But in terms of a standard static sign, you know, you're not talking much less than a couple of $1,000.
and further, Mr. Chairman, there's a school on here ranked at 130 that's been closed for about 4 or 5 years. I just think it needs.
you, Mr. Chairman. Look, as we asked staff to have a look at this and come back to us, they have done that. They've done a high-level job on it, and I think it needs to be done properly. If council is going to be behind looking at safety measures at schools, it needs to be. We can't just sort of do a bit here and a bit there. The whole safety of that area needs to be looked at, and they come back with a plan that we then approve. We can't do it any other way. We can't think that we can do it shortcuts by interfering with the process that they're doing, and then you suffer the consequences later on. No, I approve of the process here. I think it's been looked at reasonably thoroughly, and there's a proper process going forward.
Mr. Chairman, I totally support Councillor Wilson. I've looked at the two schools of my area, Kalika and Rata College, and what is being proposed is very good.
Can I just ask if the 300,000 is allowed for in this year's annual plan?
We have enough budget for the 300,000 within our minor works program. It's easily accommodated.
Thank you.
I was going to look at it, I mean, yeah, I'm the same. I read through this explicitly, and I totally support the cause. It's really imperative that we get the schools on board with it as well when we get to the final result of what's actually going to be happening for the upgraded safety measure for the schools, whether it's signage or moving whatever, and having education department, everybody on board with the program. So, yep, this is a start, and I think it's a great report.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Can I just ask one question, Helen? I see a lot of these schools already have, well, some of them that I'm aware of have electronic signage up, and they're on the list here as prioritised in order of schools. Does that mean they want more? They're wanting greater? I'm sorry, it's not Helen. I'm talking to the wrong person. I'm sorry, folks. Yeah.
So that prioritised list of schools is obviously a risk-based prioritised list based on the likelihood and probability of an accident happening at that school based on the criteria shown in the report. So some schools already have a set level of improvement already done, but there's still concerns raised from that school or observed on site. Hence, they've probably shown in the top 20.
Okay. So basically, the agenda was provided to us to offer advice around prioritisation, and so at the end of the day, we can't, as Councillor Wilson said, who are we without sort of more detailed information to actually even to do that, rather than pick on the schools that we might think are championing our cause. But so you'd be happy enough to agree to the prioritisation as it stands, or would you prefer to see a more detailed as it is? Okay. Yeah, okay. Right, thanks.
I'm happy to move the recommendations on page 12, and understanding that information will come back to us relative to each school and what's going to be introduced, just so we're kept up to speed. Because if we agree 300,000, then 300,000 can be spent, but it would be nice to have a report so we know.
Yep.
Secondly, we're only agreeing to prioritisation criteria, not to the prioritisation of the schools.
Exactly.
Yep. Okay. So that's we understand that, right? Okay then. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Seymour Wilson. Right. Page 51.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to move this. It's a recommendation from a voting team.
So it's moved by Councillor Seymour, second by Councillor Burdett. Any discussion? Councillor Dunn.
Yeah, I had to have a good long think about this. I found this report left me hanging for more information in order to make a good decision, actually. It's very clear.
Can you just move your thing away a little bit? I just find if you're too close to the...
It's very clear that chip seal is cheaper. I get that. That's made really clear in the report. However, I'm just a little bit sceptical because we've kind of learnt in the last sort of 5 years that cheaper isn't always best. So I was wondering if we could get a little bit more information in order to make a better decision. I've got 4 things down here. It says 18 years ago that we chose asphalt for our urban roads. There are obviously reasons for doing that. What were they? And are they no longer valid today? Why we don't need them? And whole of life costs. Where's a comparison of the whole of life costs over the 20 to 25 year period that we're going to have them? So how do we ensure that the cost savings that we're going to get today don't end up costing us more in the long run? So save now, pay more later. And maybe a little bit more evidence on which surface is the best option over the long term, not just about saving costs today. The other one was, it says, the key driver for this change is cost savings. I'm a little bit perplexed by that because we've just confirmed our long-term plan with budgets and levels of service, and now we're immediately talking about cost savings. So it just leaves me a little bit confused. Oh no, maybe I'm just being a little bit neurotic, but last time we made a change to our roading, in order to save money, we ended up in a massive pickle, and those cost savings never appeared, and they're still haunting us right now. So I'm just a little bit...
Councillor, yeah, can I comment to that, Councillor?
I haven't finished yet, actually. I just got one more thing. And then the last thing in the report that got me a little bit flustered was with the quote that says, these cost savings will allow roading funds to be redirected to areas of greater need. Okay, that's cool, but what are these greater needs and where are they? The shifting funds around, like, I don't have an issue with chip versus asphalt. I'm just saying I don't have enough information in this report where I feel comfortable making a good decision. So shifting the roads from urban road investment isn't the issue for me. It's being able to show to the ratepayer that the levels of service are still going to be okay and that there is transparency around what are the greater needs in the network. Well, I don't know what they are sitting here right now. You obviously do. And if we could have that clarity and that certainty, I would feel much more comfortable making this decision. So just reiterate, I'm not phased on which one to go to. I just don't have enough information to choose. Because it's so vague, we could assume that the funding is going to be taken from urban roads to, I don't know, improve forestry roads. And so there's some transparency that's needed there in terms of for me to make a good decision. So I'm uncomfortable with the information that we've got to decide.
Thank you. I'd like to just comment to the first part of that. And when we discussed the chip seal issue, the savings there in a pre-meeting, it didn't take me long to be very comfortable that when I heard the sort of percentage numbers of savings against the costs against the outcomes and like to start with, I had the same thought. I said, are we buying something that's a lower quality and as a but I spoke with Mr. Wilson here and it didn't take me a couple of minutes to realise that I was comfortable with it. And I don't know, would you be like to speak on a couple of numbers or someone speak on the numbers that we might around in that tone now just to sort of make...
If I can just speak to the high level first, and then Darren, if you can fill in the technical side of the asphalt versus chip seal. Part of the completely Councillor Dunn, we have just adopted the LTP and looking at the financing that comes in and as part of that. One of the things that we're challenged with is making sure we're getting the best return on that investment that we put through the LTP. One of the big things for us is making sure that the road surface is fit for purpose, and it's what is needed for that stretch of road. Asphalt 18 years ago was a lot easier to put down than now. We don't have the plant in town anymore that used to be here because we don't put down the volumes due to the cost. So it was a lot easier, and we had a lot more money back then as well. So it was seen as a good solution to put down. Part of the laying costs of it is one thing, but it's also whether or not we need to go to that level of service, given they don't have heavy vehicles on them, they don't have the high use. So somewhere like Ormond Road, absolutely asphalt is the right thing for out there because of the heavy vehicles that are running through there at the moment. We need to make sure it's a strong surface that can take the turning of trucks and those things. For the smaller roads that we're looking to apply this policy to, they don't have the volumes, they don't have the wear and tear that we get. And it's around how we make sure that we fix them appropriately back. So it's around how we make that money go further. As councillors are fully aware within the roading budgets, there's never enough for what amount of work that needs to be there. And the savings for this year would be ploughed straight back into the network across a range of different things. So some of it would end up in the Metling budget. Some of it would end up on fixing some of the other areas in the urban area like stormwater. There's some repairs that we need to do. So it would be spread across. And it'd be something that we would vary each year where those savings were going to be spent, depending on what the need of the asset was and where we were needing to invest it across, so different areas as it went through. The savings whole of life, Darren, do you want to get to that part about the benefit of asphalt over chip seal for what it is that we've got there? And I'll see if I've missed anything. Sorry, Councillor Dunn.
Yeah, with the chip over the AC is to re-waterproof the surface. So it's like repainting your roof. If you don't repaint your roof, then it'll rust. So the whole purpose of putting another chip seal on is to prevent the roof from rusting or the tin from rusting, in this case, the subgrade of the road deteriorating. What'll happen is then we end up with far more costs or greater costs to actually fix the road foundation. So this is an easy way to, it's not a, we're not buying a less product or lesser product. It's just a way of repainting that roof. And then when you look at the cost benefits over time, it's far easier to repaint your roof every, say, 5 years than it is to leave it for 10 and then try and fix the rusty bits and then paint it again after 10. So I know that's a pretty rude way of describing it, but it's a similar process for the sealing of the road. It's all about protecting the road integrity.
So in terms of over the whole life of this road, I'm interested to know if we do asphalt versus chip seal over the whole period,
Yep.
which one is best for the region?
Versus cost.
For cost, in terms
Versus
of
cost. Yeah, well, it's back to the conversation that Dave just said about the traffic and wear and tear on there. So if you've got a chip seal road that's under high stress, then you won't receive the benefits because you'll be back there the next year fixing what's the trucks or whatever have torn off it. But where you've got a low traffic road where the wear and tear isn't the same, then the life of that chip is longer. It's only $6 a square metre against between $50 and $80 a square metre. So you will get a chip seal surface lasting 10 to 15 years, one application. The life of the pavement beneath that will last a lot longer if it's kept dry. So if we had an asphalt surface that we let crack, like it shows in some of those photos, then we won't get that period of life out of the AC that we would normally get. So we'd normally get 15 to 20 years out of a AC surface, asphalt concrete surface. But if you re-waterproof it and manage it, you'll get a lot longer life out of it.
Okay.
Yes. So it's hard to put a specific date and time on it because the traffic and wear and tear, there's a lot of variables in there.
Yeah, it would have been good to have this information in the report because it's really easy to save costs today and pay later. We see that too much. And that's kind of what concerned me about this paper.
Yep.
Back to you were saying redirected grading needs. We don't actually know what they are, do we? You do them on a year-by-year basis, is that correct?
We'd be looking at the management plan for the year, the delivery works program for the year, and seeing where we would put it in. So it would vary each year around where the asset needs the money to be spent on it, and that will change every year. We refine that every 3 months. We're going through and changing the work program to make sure it's reflective of what's happening on the asset. But off the top of my head, I know where the ones are right now that we need it. So it's heavy metalling, it's drainage, would be looking to put it into those, would be where, if I had the extra 400,000, that's where we'd spend it tomorrow.
So the ratepayers can be assured that these savings aren't going to be put somewhere else in the network for example, I just use that as an example, forestry rating. So basically, there's a concern that you're going to take money out of the urban centre and go and spend it somewhere else to people that may not be contributing.
I'll be straight, Councillor Dunn. We are looking across the whole of the network, so we'll be looking at local roads. We don't see them as different. We see the local road network as one. So we would potentially put it onto heavy metalling, which invariably does have logging trucks rolling over it. That would be where we'd look to spend. We also need to spend in the urban area. We have a problem with the stormwater sumps. I'll be wanting to make sure that this is sorting out some of that as well as part of it. So, like I said, it'd go across the network and into different spaces.
Yeah, I'm just like, so chip seal is a coating.
Yes.
You wouldn't build a new road and put chip seal on to start with. So it's just basically a coating to protect the road and give it longevity.
We're talking about where there's existing asphalt roads.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can build a new road and chip seal it. Yes, that's a perfectly
You could
acceptable
do that,
and
as
good
long as your
practice.
base was fine.
Yes, correct.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. Now, the other one was the noise factor.
Yes.
There is obviously an increase in noise from a chip seal road.
Yes.
So, yeah, you would be prioritising where you'd be putting chip seal,
Correct.
like on a residential road or along.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, the report talks about choosing the right methods
Mm.
and the right combination of chip seals to make sure that the noise factor is minimised as much as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we would do that on a case-by-case basis, yes.
Okay, I thought I actually read it in there, but I might have been told that on a decibel basis, it's generally a couple of 0 points difference.
Yes.
So it might have been that I was told it rather. I thought it was in here, but I can't see it at a quick glance. But in here, so guys, the big thing to remember is that to do a kilometre of chip seal is well, you're talking about 500,000 of asphalt to 60. It's 8 times the price. And if it lasts 15 years on less used roads, then the whole of life thing is a no-brainer. So I have a mover and a second for it. Unless there's any more comment, we'll put it all in favour, against, carried. Thank you. Right, page 65. Regional Pest Management Plan with
I'm happy to move that, Mr. Chairman. It's been raised a number of times at DPNR and weed controls, and it's really good to see some priority being given to it. It's a hideous weed that is spreading from our system, so we really need to have GPS on it. So good to see some movement.
Right. Moved by Councillor Seymour, second by Councillor Bird. Is there any discussion? I think it's pretty straightforward. This one, it's something that needs to be done. So all in favour, against, carried. Page 6. Off just as I started to talk. We're going to get an update on our capital projects. So who's that with you? Are you?
So if the committee's okay to take the report as read, we can take questions on it. Alexios is here if there are any specific questions for any of the projects.
Done a very good job. My question through the chairman to Alex, and I put a full on the ground when we were down by the Western Road Bridge, where there have been projects done on the coast, tourism projects. Why have they not been balanced with the other side? One side of the road's perfect. They're about to put the seal down when the construction season starts. I talk about the Waipu with the Tigiti turn-off. one side's had a marvellous job done on it, the other one's still rubbish, nothing's done. So who actually makes these decisions? And another one that was mentioned at the time, and it's even worse now, as you climb the Hungia Hill, on the left-hand side going up, the transport agency own the turnaround. The cattle stops there are had it, there's no fencing, and the road's a bit higgledy-piggledy. Where's all that going? Well, nowhere.
So through the chair, we had an issue with a number of reseals on the Northern Network as part of the changeover in the contractor. We weren't able to complete the program that we wanted to, and as the committee's aware, we had a number fail, which are at the contractor's cost to fix some of those coming up this construction season because they were down too late. As those failed, we pulled the pin on the other ones to make sure we weren't throwing any good money after bad. So there are areas that we do need to come back to this construction season, and there's some outstanding works on those reseals. The Ehongia Hill lay-by there, if it's okay with the committee, we'll bring back an action item on that when Dave's here to bring back actually where that's up to and where that sits, because I know Councillor Burdett, you've raised it a couple of times, so we'll bring an action item back for that. If that's all right, Helen?
Thank you.
All good? That's all. Very good. Councillor Foster?
Yeah, and it's not a question, but I'd just like to congratulate Tarawhiti Roads on some of these projects. In particular, one of really great passion was the Makarori rest area at Makarori. It's been totally transformed. The whole process to start with, I was contacted to help consult with the surfing community in particular because they are the major users of this area. And from the initial plans to what was done, it was actually changed quite a bit. Councillor Dunn was involved as well. And so we made it a lot more user-friendly for the needs and the desires of the local surfing community in particular. And the outcome has been absolutely fantastic. And I've just got to applaud the process, and hopefully this would happen in other areas where there's obviously a lot of community involvement and use of particular areas. This is a great example of how it should be done, actually. Yeah, and yeah, I really congratulate it. And the outcome, every time I go out there, everyone's just applauding it. It may even, you know, the Freedom, there's so many more parks there now, and the Freedom camping issue might not be as great as what it was in the past. It will be interesting to see, actually, but it has been coordinated, the lines are there, and hopefully everyone will adhere to it. So yeah, fantastic.
Thank you for that, Councillor.
I'd like to endorse that because it does look really good now. It's finished and a couple of picnic tables, so I look forward to the Next Coast projects being done as well, which we read are starting soon. And the other thing that is looking really great is the concrete pathway, the extension of the cycleway along Wainui Road, and now a wide concrete pathway growing as we speak. So that's looking really good. So that's cycleway, Wainui Cycleway Stage 2. So well done.
Right.
I'm happy to move that report.
Okay. Second by Councillor Burdett. Any other discussion? All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Right, now we're going to have a little update on the June weather events. Helen, welcome.
The purpose of this report is just to update the committee where we're at. As you can see, we had quite a big hit, and I know that the committee's aware of that. We are still quantifying the final cost for what's going to hit through from those events, and it's working with NZTA about what that impact's going to be, how we're going to deliver the works and those kind of things as well. So if there's any questions for Helen, Chair, must say publicly, has done a fantastic job through the events, and I know most of you are aware of the good work she did contacting farmers, working with the community, being out there, answering her phone at 2 o'clock in the morning, and did an outstanding job. So I'd just like to recognise that for the committee.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to speak to that too. I'd like to thank Helen for everything that she did, primarily because that weather event initially severely affected the Tawhiti Ward, and then the second event, the Waipoa area. You were really available and everybody did appreciate the contact and the feedback that they got very, very quickly. I would just like to ask though that on page 77 at item 2, maybe we do include the Whangara Pākara area, because that has been quite substantially affected. It wasn't just Tolaga Bay. And there are landowners in there that are still resurrecting fences on the upper Pākara River and the Waimoik River. So I just thought if you could add that into that report, but it's in light of the extent of and the volume of water that we had, the work that's been done by council, and now the road, metalling of the roading, I want to acknowledge that. I've had, the Tawhiparo Farms guys this morning said that the Tawhiparo Road upper area is in the best condition it's been for years. So now it's taken a lot of work, but thank you very much for that. And there's good metal on the Waimoik and Andrews Road. So we appreciate that restoration is happening. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Seymour, and I think that, you know, that also extended from the whole committee.
Two Daves, Dave starting here, Helen's done a magnificent job, and so have balanced the staff. Hierarchy Roads, one of the good things Helen did was the ongoing communication road conditions with Dave following it up. And even today, they're still reporting. I thought the whole thing from council's point of view and then Tairāti Roads was excellent. And anyone who deigned to criticise wanted to have a look in the mirror and look at themselves. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Councillor Burby. Yeah, no, that's good. And you must be sort of quite pleased to hear some good news for a change after the last few years. But no, that's great. Thank you very much, both of you. Right.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Is that do you want to finish something you already?
Well, I just wanted to ask after the praise. I just want to ask because I've had some queries and council officers are aware of it, but because the Herald has already reported this paper, there has been something. It's page 79, item 23, and it's around Arakihi and Kiori Road, and the request from landowners up there as to at what point they may be able to take trailers on stock trucks and log trucks, and it's a private company. So I realise there's not an answer, but you just like to reaffirm what the position is for the benefit of the meeting today, please. Somebody?
Through the chair, on Arakihi, Kiori and West Toe, we're working through an announcement that will come out later this week. We have been working, as you know, Councillor Seymour, very hard to try and get that road back to where we need it to be. We've been in contact with the residents up that road about what it is that we're doing, and sorry to be obtuse, but we'd like to have the conversations with those residents first to make sure that they're the first to know the plan, and then we'll have an announcement come back later in the week for the public, for the general public. But I know that Helen has been talking to the affected farmers up there and how we're working those logistics through.
And when you have that meeting, will the local councillor be able to attend? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, look, it was just a comment really. It's interesting that in past years we have talked about the possible closure of roads, and that was for the purpose of in very heavy wet winter season where the roads are actually getting totally hammered. You try and fix them up to a certain degree with metalling, and it doesn't work because it's just too wet. But now the change is that these events are becoming so much more extreme, it's actually come to a safety issue where now you're considering that you're going to take a preemptive decision to close roads. And I think that's entirely appropriate. And I think it's probably luck that up till now we haven't had adverse events that somebody's been killed because of that an event comes through and takes part of the road out and the first person along there is over the side or whatever. So that is a real change of how we're going to manage things. And of course, as you say, you're going to talk with the users of those roads to set up a policy. But it just shows that the step has to be taken further because of this, the adverse weather that we do have. And I'm very heartened to see that you're taking proactive measures to guard against these things. So well done.
Next Saturday.
Actually, if I can just reinforce that, that is a position that we are going to take, and we're going to take it more often. What happened in this process was actually really good. It set the scene for how we're going to do things further. We're tasked with managing the network, and we're going to get to a point where rain forecasts and snow and ice and all the rest of it will become, it'll be evidence-based decision making. Unfortunately, what happened for us this time after preemptively closing the roads, we had the second event, which then took the roads out for longer. It was, very unfortunate, but that is how we intend to manage our network going forward, and particularly through the winter. And I know the rural councils have been asking for us to do this for a long time, like we used to do in the old days. So now we're at a position we can do it and show that it actually works and has the benefits for the council.
Just as a point, sorry. Could we do better with a policy? And that's advice I'd take from Mr. Wilson on that, because again, there's a heavy weather warning coming up later in the week, and there might be 2 days, and it might be that the policy says, well, if we were to do some preemptive work on those 2 days, by Tuesday the roads are fine again and good to go, and not a whole lot of maintenance to do. Do you think we need to do a policy on that?
So currently council has powers under our traffic and parking bylaw to close roads. We can close roads for where we need to do works, and we haven't used it because we haven't needed to. A lot of the times with the heavy users, we will tell them, and we do an agreement that they'll be off the road for us for certain periods of time. So we've done it Kanakanai last year, for example. We've asked for them to stop for 4 days so that we could get ahead of them with the metling, because there was just too many trucks going through, so that we could do the fix. The company's moved for us. We have just come to an agreement with one of the forestry companies out in the west where the road is being closed, and they're going to do the maintenance to fix it, because they're also the people that hammered it at the same time. So they're going to be the only ones on that road. It's a section of road that they're the only ones using. It doesn't affect anybody else. So the road has been closed to the public, but the forestry companies are still using it, and they're also paying to fix it at the same time. So those agreements, as you say, Councillor Wilson, are the ones that we're using, that we talked about. We're doing them now to actually save money and mean that they can keep running at the same time. So there are checks and balances that go through with that. In closing roads, I must say, my phone goes crazy every single time those roads are closed, and every day they're closed, my phone keeps ringing as well. So there are very real costs for the farmers, for the landowners, for the forest managers, the contractors and everybody. So it's not a decision we take lightly, and hence why companies will step up, because it's far more cost effective for them to fix some of those roads than it is for us to close them on them. So it is, the relationships we talked about last year are actually coming to fruition this year, and it's working quite well. So to Councillor Seymour's point, when we close the road, it does mean that residents aren't allowed up it. It means the general public aren't. So for the likes of Arakehi, that's been closed for weeks, residents have still been able to use it, and we've still been able to grant exemptions for those as well. So for Arakehi, we've granted exemptions for fuel deliveries, stock coming in and out, supplies coming in and out, and those things. We close the road so we can manage who's on it, and we know who's on it. So Arakehi absolutely has been closed the last couple of weeks. Things have been going through, but it was actually, as Councillor Wilson said, a health and safety concern for our contractors who were on the network. We didn't want trucks buzzing them at the same time, so we kept everybody off.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, while I've waxed lyrical about our council staff and Tairāwhi roads, let's not forget the effort put in by the contractors across the board. It's just amazing, day and night.
Thank you for that. Yep. And right, so yes. Okay, I'll move the report. If I get a seconder?
Yes.
Second, Councillor Wilson. Anything else? All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much, everyone.